Today we celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, a man whose impact on the march toward civil rights cannot be adequately measured. Dr. King was both an example of unrivaled courage and great intelligence. He was admitted to Morehouse College at the age of 15. By the age of 26, Dr. King had earned 2 additional degrees that would culminate in his being granted a doctorate in philosophy from Boston University. His leadership can best be shown by his ability to build a coalition among people of all races. Dr. Martin Luther King's enigmatic speaking style would soon be witnessed by a national audience as he became our leader in his efforts to end discrimination at every level. Dr. King would apply the principles of nonviolence when leading the fight to permanently outlaw segregation. He would organize and lead a number of protests and rallies that would soon result in not just a national, but an international movement. In the election of 1960, Dr. King helped to organize African Americans into a voting bloc that delivered a clear impact in the presidential race. On a personal note, I can remember hearing him deliver his speeches at the March on Washington and his I've Been to the Mountaintop in Memphis. Tragically, his life was cut short by an assassin's bullet in 1968, but I will always treasure the gift that this man was to not just the United States, but to the entire world. We'll welcome you to this interview session today. I've invited in this morning Lisa Chavous, who was just recently elected president of the Lawrence Common Council. Lisa is the first African-American female to be president of the Common Council, and we're here to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Day. Lisa, what's your earliest MLK memory?
I would have to say that my earliest memory is growing up as a child and being exposed to Martin Luther King through my church and through a community center that I participated in as a child.
Difference in our ages, because I was 14 years old when Dr. King was assassinated, so I was old enough to really know what he was doing, and certainly I was following him in the news, but my knowledge of Dr. Martin, we didn't start teaching about Dr. King until actually my first year teaching was probably 1977, so it was 9 or 10 years before he made it into the history books. That was kind of a big deal for me. What did the assassination mean to you?
The assassination to me immortalized his dream. It made it live on forever through myself and hopefully through others. As a result of his assassination, although tragic, I think that he basically made a roadmap for us to live by as it relates to treating others fairly and equality.
Looking where we're at today, as the first African American female council president, how did Martin Luther King's work play into this accomplishment?
I think there are a lot of firsts as a result of his work and his sacrifice. I believe that the possibility of being the first African American president of the council is possible because of his sacrifice and others like him. Without their work and their tireless efforts, I don't think it would be possible.
Yeah, I'd say it's amazing. I was fortunate to have both my kids went through schools, in Lawrence Township schools. And as you know, Lawrence Township is a very diverse city and a very diverse school system. And seeing how my kids have been able to certainly adapt to the real world because of their opportunity to be exposed to diversity, both Latino and African American, it's pretty amazing for me to be able to see that. Remember, I'm much older than you are, so when I was going through Lawrence Township schools, we may have had 4 or 5 African Americans in my entire senior class. So for me, being able to come back and teach in that environment and see the changes that are being made, we aren't there yet, everybody knows that, but certainly we've made some great strides, in terms of moving forward. Lisa, how can we live up to King's dream as a community?
You mentioned diversity. I believe that diversity is key. I think it's very important that as a community we embrace diversity, not only as it relates to people, but also as it relates to ideas. I think that having a different opinion or a different viewpoint should not be a negative thing. I believe that the best ideas and creativity comes as a result of diverse thinking and diverse people.
It's a great answer, because when I see what is happening at the national level right now is that apparently diversity is something that no one wants to talk about or no one wants to actually discuss as being a good thing. And as a result, we see almost gridlock, at the federal level. I'd like to think that at the local level we can get beyond that and move toward what's best for, in this case, the city, or what's best for our citizens in the city of Lawrence. So it's a great topic to kind of end with right there. So thank you, President Chavous, for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll take this opportunity to introduce to you Donita Steens, who is our HR director here for the City of Lawrence. Donita came on board actually early last year, and she's been a tremendous addition to my staff. She's an invaluable addition to my staff. Donita also represents the first African American HR director in the City of Lawrence. Very proud of that in there. But Donita would have been hired regardless of her skin color. She's highly qualified and tremendously good worker. But I've got a few questions to ask you today about Dr. Martin Luther King coming up here shortly on Monday. So I just want to ask you a few things, and just feel free to answer however you want to, and then I'll add in some if I need to, and I'll answer in there too. Donita, what's your earliest Martin Luther King memory?
My earliest memory would have to be attending community events, and also in school, hearing the I Have a Dream speech over the PA system was always uplifting, just to hear that play through as you were doing your work. Very encouraging and motivating.
Donita, what did Dr. King's assassination mean to you?
It was very heartbreaking. You know, it was tragic to hear that he had been assassinated, and he wanted to do so many great things. I felt as though his dream had been tarnished, and was fearful that it may not continue on.
I gotta tell you, I lived in Indianapolis at the time, and I was 14 years old, and when I first learned of the assassination, it was a bit of a scary time in Indianapolis at that time. So we got through it, obviously, but it was one situation in which we'd had assassinations earlier, 63, starting with John Kennedy, then of course with Medgar Evers, Dr. King, and then Bob Kennedy later on. So it was a pretty scary time in there. I'm old enough to remember that. Donita, looking at where you are today as the first African American HR director in the City of Lawrence, how did Dr. King's work play into this accomplishment?
Oh my gosh, without the many, many sacrifices that he made and his impact that he had on the community and even on the world, I don't think that change would even have begun to take place to allow such opportunities to exist, not just for myself, but for others.
Yeah, it's nice for me to be able to look at and see the change. It's happened. I'm 63 years old, so I've been able to be kind of witness to the changes that have taken place. We're not there yet, obviously, but we're certainly moving along the right line, moving forward in there. So it's great to have that happening. This is a tough one. It's one that I have to give a lot of thought in, so take your time. In your estimation, how can we live up to Dr. King's dream as a community?
As a community, I feel like we've been presented with a great challenge to live up to his dream. I think we really have to continue to be involved in the community, involved in what's going on around the city and the state and even the world, again, to just really be excited to get in there and make the change and continue to have his dream live on.
Yeah, I think it charges us to go back and revisit Dr. King and realize that he was not just a leader in the United States, he was a leader throughout the world. And his ideas and his impact is certainly long-lasting and impactful still today, even throughout other areas of the world too. So thank you for coming in this morning, Donita. I appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce City of Lawrence's first public information officer, Jimmy Griffin, who happens also to be an African American. So it's especially important for me to be able to sit here and talk with Jimmy. He's known throughout the city as a guy who always has a smile on his face. I don't know how he does it, but he does it every day. So it's great to be able to come in and work with him. So I've got a few things I want to ask you today, and you're usually behind the camera. So today I've got you in front of the camera. So I know this is uncomfortable for you, but I think you'll do quite well.
Yeah.
Jimmy, what was your earliest memory of Dr. Martin Luther King?
My earliest memory of King was in history class. They would talk to us in Black History Month, tell us about what King did.
Jimmy, what did Dr. King's assassination mean to you? You read about it.
To me, Dr. King's assassination basically gives me motivation that even if you kill the man, you can't kill his dream. So, you know, if you believe in something and believe in it wholeheartedly, nobody can take that away from you no matter what.
So you can't change that answer. No, I'm sure Dr. King would have been great. Would have been happy to hear that answer from you, Jimmy. Looking where you're at today, first PIO in the City of Lawrence, happen to be African American too. How did Dr. King's work maybe play into that happening?
I think without Dr. King, it wouldn't have been possible. I mean, for me or any Black person that's at levels of success, we wouldn't have been able to do it without him or the other people that that led the way in the civil rights movement as well.
Certainly paved the way for that kind of advancement. This is the toughest one, I think, and I've asked this of everybody, so give it some thought. How can we as a community live up to Dr. King's dream?
As a community, to live up to his dream, I think we need to reach out to people who are different than us and understand them more. When you see what's going on in the news sometimes today, you see that even though we've came a long way, you know, we have had a black president, we still have a long way to go. So I think that we have to just get to know one another and love each other for our differences.
I gotta tell you, it's great for me to be able to have a chance to talk with young people about this very topic, because it's great for me to be able to hear those kinds of things that you're saying and see that there are changes being made and we are moving forward along the right path. So thank you, Jimmy, for the time this morning. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
I want to take the opportunity to welcome an individual that I'm very proud of. Jason Souter was one of my early hires in the city of Lawrence. He actually serves as deputy controller for the city of Lawrence. Jason is a guy that is someone that I am extremely proud to be able to have the opportunity to hire him to come into the city. And I've got him here this morning to answer a few questions about Dr. Martin Luther King Day coming up here shortly. So Jason, let's start. What's your earliest memory of Martin Luther King Day? Martin Luther King, period.
Well, my earliest memory would be when I was a kid, and we had to learn the speech. And I only took a couple of letters. It was "I have a dream." That was the only part I could memorize. It was just an extremely long speech, and at that point, I knew that must have been a great mind to memorize that speech.
His education, a lot of people don't realize how well educated he was.
Yeah,
he had a couple of doctorate degrees.
Yeah, he graduated
he was a
high
great
school at like 15, I
15
think.
years old, 15 years old. This is a tough one, I think, to think about. What did Dr. King's assassination mean to you?
Wow. You know, I think since this was before my time, I think back then, if you look at, you know, what it meant to the people, it meant hopelessness. But then fast forwarding, it meant hope, because he wouldn't be the king that he is if he had not died. So it took his death to kind of really push his message to the front.
I have to admit, I was 14 years old when that happened.
Were you
I
14?
remember that happening and not really knowing which way to turn, because we'd gone through a couple of assassinations earlier in that decade, and this seemed like something that you almost felt like he was kind of protected, but then it happens and you say, okay, where do we go from here? Because it was a scary period, quite frankly, in Indianapolis and throughout the United States in there. Looking at where you're at today, Deputy Controller for the 18th largest city in Indiana, how did Dr. Martin Luther King work play into that achievement?
Wow, that's a good question. I think part of his speech where he talks about one day our children can play together, whether it be black, white, brown, yellow, orange, whatever. I think really that's kind of how I ended up in Lawrence. I think that I was connected with Jason Fenwick, who is your deputy mayor and the controller. And if he had not seen past colors, then he would have never introduced me to you. But because he's seen past the whole color thing and just recognized me for who I was, it allowed me to have an opportunity to come here and serve the constituents of Lawrence.
Yeah, for me, it's a fortunate turn of events, because I would never have known you had Jason not connected me with you, and I'd never had the opportunity to actually bring you on board. So I look at that as a very fortunate occurrence for me. And who would have known, you know, when I hired Fenwick back in November of 2015, that we'd end up here. So it was an extremely fortunate situation for me. How can we today live up to King's memory as a community?
I think that is the toughest piece. The reality is, as long as we live in a world where we still have the first minority to do something, where that has to be celebrated, then we still got a lot of progress to do. So when we can get to the point to where, as a community, we can celebrate people and their achievements and not have to focus on this was the first minority, first Hispanic to do this, first black to do this. But instead, people have such a fair opportunity to advance within the community that you just see the community, people advancing as they just achieved, and not so much of the first person to do so. But as long as we have to recognize who the first is, I think it just shows how much progress that we really need within the community. Now, with that being said, I think recognizing the first does motivate our children, which is very necessary. But at some point, we want our children to be in a position where they see everybody just as achievers and have the possibility of achieving without necessarily being restricted by their color.
It's a great perspective, and I think that's certainly a way to look at it, which we're looking toward the future. I think the reality is that there are role models, and you're a role model whether you want to admit that or not. There are others that are the same way. And I think serving as a role model, being the first, you become the model for children, that are looking to hear and say, I can be that someday. I can be that someday. I think that's incredibly important to set that stage.
Hey, my greatest fan, I hope, is my daughter. And hopefully I can be somewhat of a role model, whether it be the things to do in life or the things not to do in life. And I hope she can be my greatest fan. And, if I achieve that, then that's really the ultimate success.
It's safe to say you've probably already done that. So.
Oh, I don't know.
Thank you, Jason, for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.